They gon' need a couple of my thoughts, man. They don't ask me for my joints too often. Gotta give them something to keep them talking. But what they do not know is I'm a boss. My 2 cents, I got them. My 2 cents, I give them. My 2 cents, don't doubt them. My 2 cents is realer. My 2 cents, I got them. My 2 cents, I give them. My 2 cents, don't doubt them. My 2 cents is realer. You ain't asked us for it, but we give it anyway. This the real 2 cent show. Go get them, Lady J.
Welcome to The Real 2 Cents. You didn't ask us for it, but we give it to you anyway. Real topics discussed by real people who give their real 2 cents. And I'm your host, Lady J. And today we are going to be talking about when loving you is wrong and leaving you is right, with a focus on domestic violence. And my guest today is none other than my good friend, Shirley Carson of Survivor Visions, Inc. And she knows all too well about domestic violence firsthand, not only as a child, but also as an adult.
Yes.
So, Shirley, thank you for joining me today.
No problem. My pleasure.
You know, I just think that your story is extremely amazing and it's powerful, it's unique. And I love how you have allowed your story to make you better and not bitter and mold you into who you have become. And I'm glad that you have taken the tools from that so you can share with other victims and survivors.
Yes.
So before we get into how you are able to accomplish all of that, let's talk about your story. So tell me your story.
So we know domestic violence is a cycle that pretty much repeats itself. Growing up in the house where I was a victim of violence, you can't really say domestic violence because it was from my parents. So where I was abused pretty much coming up in a household, and I tend to have taken that with me into relationships. So, my mom was one of those where, I would get beats and beatings for, everybody else in the house. I would be the one to get blamed for everything. I was kind of like the Cinderella in the house, special treatments for the others opposed to, what I had to deal with. So I kind of took that into relationships. I kind of ran from those guys that you probably would consider the good guys, the gentlemen want to open the doors, want to do that. I wasn't used to that, so I didn't like that and I didn't allow that. And I found myself clinging more to the guys that called me out my name, cursed me out, put their hands on me because that's all I knew. And that's how I grew up in a household like that. So I ended up getting into a relationship that I was in for 16 years. And I think it was by far one of the worst relationships that I had ever endured. I went through all kind of violence, financial, mental, physical, all of them. You name them, and I experienced all of them throughout that whole entire relationship. So far as the beatings on the daily, far as walking around in your house on eggshells, making sure you do the right thing so you won't get beatings, scared to go out because when you go out, you go back home, you getting beat when you come back in the house, even though you had, the permission to go out. So, I kind of lived a life up into scared to do anything, and I thought it was something that I had to deal with. I thought it was something that I had to, accept this from this person. And I had to go, continue to go through this with this person, not knowing that, I deserve so much more. But
right.
When you've grown up in something like that and then you find yourself attracting those type of guys, then you tend to think that it's normal.
Yeah, I know. Well, we both know a lot about domestic violence. I grew up in a house full of domestic violence and entered into a few domestic violence relationships myself.
Absolutely.
So I definitely can identify with that and understand where you're coming from. Tell me, why do you think that you were singled out as a child, as the Cinderella of the bunch?
You know what? I ask myself that all the time. Unfortunately, my mom ended up passing when I was 16, which was, God forbid, as I hate to say it, which is, kind of something I prayed on. But so I don't know, I don't know. And I always tell myself as an adult, if she was here, I just had so many questions I wanted to ask her. I've heard through family members, her siblings, maybe she was trying to beat, her out of you, So I've been given like all type of excuses, but I mean, I honestly don't know. That's something I can't answer.
Okay, tell me what made you stay as long as you did in the relationship?
So I think most domestic violence cases, and why people tend to stay so long is, at least mine was fear. I grew up in a small town. I'm from Gary, Indiana. And so we all know Gary is so small. So I thought about it so many times, but then I would tell myself, how can I do this? He knows where my, granny stays. He knows where pretty much everybody stays. So how can I leave? And then if I leave and I run into him or he get a hold on me, it's going to only be worse. So I may as well just stay, And that's what I did,
Yeah, a lot of people have asked me, and I've heard them ask other people who have been in domestic violence relationships, like, how could you stay there and let somebody hit on you and this and now I was a fighter. You hit me, I'm hitting you back. I wasn't one of those who cowered, but people don't realize that it starts with the mind. Once they have your mind, and get you to believe, that you can't do this, you aren't this, you can't be that, you can't accomplish this. It's like you stuck.
Yes.
So,
I get asked that a lot. I get asked that a lot. How could you, I'm a fighter, I would have did this. And my response is always, if you've never been in that situation, you can't say what you would have done.
That's it.
I mean, I was a fighter as well. And I was the one my brothers would call on to always fight the females. And even they asked me that question. They say, Shirley, you the one everybody call on to fight. Like, you the one, it's hard to believe that what you went through, as far as domestic violence, like, how could you allow? And I mean, another thing, when you have weapons and stuff involved, so you have to think about all that, you have to think about that, especially when you have kids. Like, that's something to think about. You can't just, react a certain kind of way.
That's true.
Because you never know. I mean, you just never know what's going through that person's mind. So, I mean, I tried to protect me and my kids to the best that I could. And
were your kids ever hit on or beat in that situation?
They weren't. I did have a scare, which I think this is one of your questions about what made me leave. It was one night I was at home, I was at home doing my routine, couldn't, go nowhere, cleaning, cooking, He would always leave and go in the daytime because he called himself selling drugs. So daytime, he would always be gone. He would always come in at night. Sometimes may not even see him. But this particular night, he came in, he came home. I knew where it was about to go from there. I'm trying to go ahead and get the kids in the bed because I know what's about to happen. I know what's about to transpire. So trying to get the kids in the bed, and he wouldn't allow that. He wouldn't allow me to put my kids in the bed. No, keep them up, whatever. And I'm just like, no, it's time for him to go to bed. But anyway, so he looked at me and just was like, I don't even want sex from you. And I'm like, okay, that's fine with me, not that I was really, and he said, but it is something I do want you to do. And I'm like, what's that? And so he lined my kids all up on the wall. He lined them all up on the wall, and, he just sat there looking at the kids, and, he pulled out a gun and he put it up against all their heads. And he like, I just want to blow all y'all brains out. And I'm just like, begging and pleading, please don't do this. If you're going to do anything, just do it to me. Don't do it to the kids. Like, whatever you want me to do, just, don't do this. And then my youngest daughter, which made me know that, it's something way more going on than just, And he looked at my youngest daughter and he said, you know what, I think I want to start with her. And I'm just like, please don't. He was like, 'cause she's just so little. So her brain's going to be so little. And he just really sitting there visualizing this. Like, her brain's going to be little and they just going to splatter everywhere. Like, I think I want to start with her first. And I'm like, please don't. Like, please don't do anything to my kids. Whatever you want me to do, I'm willing to do it. Just let my kid, just if you're going to take anybody, take me. Please don't take my kids. So kind of begged and plead. For all of our lives at that point. And he's like, you know what, then okay, if, whatever. And he was like, well, you're going to give me head, you know? And I'm like, that's fine. If that's what you want, that's what I'm going to do. And he said, yeah, but you're going to do it while the kids looking. You're going to watch. You're not going to stop. And they going to, you know, they going to watch you do this. And I'm like, if that's what you want, if that's going to save all our lives, then that's what I'm going to do. And so I proceeded, and that's what I did and had to do or whatever. And, you know, after so long, he got tired. I got tired. He went to sleep. Kids went to sleep and went to bed. And then that next morning was my, it's time to go. It's time to get away thing. After dealing with all of it for so many years, I think that alone right there was like the breaking point of it. You know, I could take the beatings. I can, you know, take going to work and covering up and, you know, going to work, crying in the bathrooms. Like, I can take that to a certain point, but that alone right there just let me know, like, if he took it this far, that next time I may not be able to stop him from doing it. And so that's when I said, you know, enough is enough. And that was my breaking point.
Yeah. So, that definitely was going to be my next question. You know, how did you know when loving you was wrong, and so leaving you is the right thing to do? Definitely. Well, of course, we thank God that you are still here and all your babies.
Oh my God.
You know, but I know firsthand that a situation like that is extremely traumatic, not just for you, but especially for your kids.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
So tell me, how has that affected that particular incident right there? How did that affect your children, and how were you able to help them through that trauma at the same time while trying to help you?
My little one, like I said, my younger ones kind of really don't, you know, didn't, but my older ones, they do, they remember it. And from that point, after escaping, which I ended up going 13 hours away, and after escaping, I prayed about the situation, like, you know, thank God for letting me get out the situation. And that's when I also promised, like, I just, you know, it could have been a whole lot worse. And so I got into a domestic violence shelter in Minnesota. They got us to where we needed to be. We started counseling. I took domestic violence classes. I took almost everything that they pretty much offered because I felt that I needed that. You know, I needed it. I needed to find myself. Me and my kids needed to, you know, not hold it in, someone to speak to it about and possibly help us. So we took counseling. We took domestic violence classes. Well, I did. I took parenting classes because I even blamed myself at some point. Like, maybe it's something I'm doing as a parent. Maybe I'm not doing something right. So I even enrolled myself into parenting classes. So I kind of took like all the help out there that they were giving. I was open for any help to possibly, you know, get us back on the right track, you know, try to help my kids mentally, because that's the number one thing that affects kids is if we fail to realize that it messes with them mentally.
Yep.
And so to get on, you know, help with their mental and things of that sort. So I stayed in Minnesota, and they did a good job. They got us together and pretty much where we needed to be. And I still say, I mean, sometimes, like, me and my kids, if, you know, go through counseling and look into, because you can never get, you know, too old, you know, and you never know. Kids find themselves talking out to strangers and, you know, more than they do. So, you know, I still try to stay open with my kids and try to, you know, communicate with them on all kind of levels to see where their mental state is, because I know it does something to you mentally. So,
and, you know, I have to commend you for accepting all the help, because that seems to be the first step that is the hardest step for most people. I know for me, I didn't start, you know, reaching out for help for years until, you know, I just felt like there was nobody that could help me, you know, especially if you're a child who came out of a situation with trauma. You know, I think that it's important for people to know that, you know, asking for help doesn't make you weak, you know, and it's not telling your business, you know, like, because that's the stigma in the African American community. You know, you ask for help, or you you getting therapy or talking to a psychologist or psychiatrist or whatever is telling your business, like everything that goes on in this house. But that's, if you have that mindset, that's why you have people that grow up to be abusers. Because let's be honest, people who are abusers, most of them are not born with chemical imbalances. Most of them have been abused themselves, or they've been taught this behavior, and they in essence are victims themselves. And a lot of people may not want to hear it. It's tight, but it's right. It is. And coming from a family where that was the norm, where abuse was going on in the home, and having an uncle now that's locked up for the same thing that he grew up in is proof that this is what our society, especially the African American community, has been raised on. And not to mention that also stems from cultural trauma. I mean, we are a traumatized people.
Definitely.
And so, and it, this is the real 2 cents. So I can say whatever I want to say on this show. Okay. But this is, it's really, it's multi-layered. It's multi-layered. And I think that you telling your story like this, because a lot of people would be, blanket in their statements or vague. But when you can be honest, open, transparent, and detailed in that, and really letting people know that, hey, this is what happened. This is, what I went through. And this is what I did to get out. It gives other people hope, especially when they can see you sitting here now. We haven't got to that yet, but see who you are now and what you were able to accomplish and how well your children are doing, that it's possible. And I know it wasn't easy. I know it wasn't easy.
Not at all.
And, you even fall back or relapse maybe into some of the same types of ways of thinking or mindsets, but you have to keep getting back up every time you do that. So, so you became an advocate for those who have been victims of domestic violence and those who are survivors of domestic violence that may still be in transitioning, into being able to have healthy relationships. Because let's be honest, it doesn't just affect your romantic relationships. It affects your relationships and how you relate to people in business, in the workplace, your kinship, friendships. So tell me what inspired you to start the nonprofit Survivors Visions.
So what inspired me to start my nonprofit was, once I got through everything that I had went through, once I had got all the help that I received while I was going through my whole transition, and I promised myself, even talked with God, I'm like, you know what? I want to help people that may be going through what I went through. I want to let them know that you're not the only one. Like, you can get out of that. It's going to take time. I'll never say it's easy, because it's not. It took me a whole lot. And just to know that people was there for me, I'm like, I just want to be one of those that's there for somebody else. I want to be one of those that people can look at me and say, I know if she did it, I can do it, which I've had that. I've had the testimony of somebody reaching out like, I follow you, I look at your motivation, I look at, certain things that you say, and I may not like anything you post on social media. I have never commented on anything that you post on social media, and I'm not even in Indiana. But I want you to know that you was my inspiration to leave my 15-year marriage of domestic violence and finding out that he was also messing with my kids. That right there alone lets me know, like, if I don't care, if I don't reach but one person, my job is done. So even that alone lets me know, like, it's people out there watching you. It's people watching your journey. It's people listening to what you have going on. So my whole thing of starting Survivors Vision is pretty much, I'm accomplishing what I wanted to do. I'm reaching people. And another thing is, I wanted to do Survivors Visions also, not just for the women and the children, but also for men.
Yes.
Men get left out so much in almost everything.
Yes.
Because we often look at a man that try to sit and talk to us and tell us something that may be going through, and we kind of throw them on a back burner. You're not letting a female beat on you. Get out our face. You're not letting this happen. But it's happening so often as well. I've had those to come out to to come out and like, I'm glad it's men too, because many people don't think that men go through domestic violence, and they do. They don't speak out because everything is so much about the women. Women. So who am I to go out and try to speak out about what I'm going through? Because I'm a man, nobody is going to listen. Yes, somebody will listen. And I'm that person that will listen. So I created that to try to, help people that may be going through the same situation that I went through, or may have went through it and a survivor as well. And just sometimes, like you said, need a constant reminder that you can do this, you can do it, So that's what made me want to do Survivor's Vision and just want to do so much more with it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why when we first talked a couple years ago, and when you were telling me that you wanted to help men too, that was so, I was like, we don't have that. We don't have that. And I think that, me being a person that loves to help people too, when you connect with people who want to do that and not understanding that we have sons. I have 2 sons. Absolutely. And if someone or some woman, were beating on them because she felt like she could, because they were raised, to treat women with respect, then I'm gonna have a problem with that. Absolutely. And I would want somebody to listen to them. Yes. And so I think that that's another stigma that we need to get away from, thinking that men can't be abused. Yes, they can, because a lot of women will take advantage of that just because they know that this man won't hit you. Now, let me just say this, and I don't care how anybody feels about it. This is what I teach my sons. Because, see, I used to be the mama to teach my sons, you don't hit women. You know what I'm saying? You don't. Then I had to change that. Oh, yeah. Because as a boy, my oldest son used to experience things on the playground with little girls who would get upset when he didn't want to play with them. One little girl scratched him, drew blood, pushed him down, and started kicking him on the ground, and he would not hit her back. I said, from now on, and there were teachers present, and they allowed this to happen. He was yelling, telling somebody to help. Nobody is... Okay, so from now on, when you tell somebody to stop, I don't care if it's a girl or a boy. If you try to run, walk away from the situation, or they keep on messing with you, you hit them back. Absolutely. If you get tapped once, I guarantee you that you'll stop. Because here's the thing: everybody deserves to live. Everybody deserves to be treated with respect, and everybody deserves not to be abused. If you dish it out, you better be ready to take it. Yeah. So, and I teach my sons that if you have the opportunity to walk away, fine. But if there are women, I know women who will throw, irons at you, skillets, and all this other kind of stuff when you're trying to walk away. You can't expect a man to not defend himself, when he's being attacked, because you can't control your emotions. Exactly. You don't know how to use your words. Exactly. So let's just be clear about that. So I think that is extremely important, and something that definitely needs to be brought to the table in an area that has probably never been addressed, with the men. And for you to be able to provide the same services and the same support to them that you do with women is important, because those kids that are involved, they see those fathers, being treated that way. And then the sons grow up thinking that that's the type of woman he need to be with. Oh, yeah. Yes. Or the daughter grows up thinking that's how she should treat her husband. But see, we don't think about that.
Yep. We don't. And I've had you would be surprised. I've had so many men to say, since we've known like what your organization is and that you pretty much give the same treatment to men, I've had so many more to open up. I've had so many to say, I've never told this story to anybody. But just because you allow us to, to do that and get, you actually sit there and listen, and you don't, tell us, oh, well, ain't no woman do that. No, because I know it can happen. Perfect example, like you just said. So I know it can happen. So I'll never be that person. So it is. And,
it's heartbreaking too for sisters and mothers and stuff, and sitting there looking in the face of your son and say, well, why didn't you do anything? Well, you told me not to hit girls. And then your heart just dropped. Now, I taught you that, Right. So I think that's important for men to have those services too. So tell us what services and products you provide and how people can support.
So I do one-on-ones pretty much where you and I can get together. Well, right now with COVID, I do a lot of Zoom, and, talking with them and people through Zoom. So I help them if it's one that's in the situation and trying to get out of a situation. We go through and I help them, do escape plans, because that's when you, like I try to tell them, when you leave me, I don't expect in a million years for you to go home and walk through the door and be like, I'm gone, because it's not that easy.
Right.
So, and it takes time. So we, sit down, do escape plans, see where it is you want to, what you want to do and how you want to do it. So we sit down and I offer that resources as well. I'm connected to a couple of like the shelters or the safe havens. So resources to possibly get them sheltered into a shelter. And so things of that. And I have so much more that I want to do down the line, which is pretty much end up opening my own shelter. Because it's nothing that breaks my heart more than a client coming back to me and saying, well, I tried these shelters you told me and they were all full. Yeah. So that kind of leaves them having to pretty much stay where they at and in the situation that they're in, because they don't want to be homeless. So I'm like, I had to think about that. Like, that's something we need more of.
Right. So how can people support and contact you?
So you can contact me. I have social medias, Survivor's Vision as well on Facebook. Survivor's Vision, which is 1982 on Instagram. I have my phone number, which is 317-937-2026. You can reach out to me whenever, any type of day or time. And I also have it, you can do donations. I have a website. You can go on and it's a donation button. And I'm also in the process of trying to do a whole apparel line for domestic violence as well. So,
Awesome. Thank you for coming on here and telling your story.
No problem.
And thank you for everything that you do for all victims, male and female.
No problem.
So for any of you who, are going through this or trying to escape, definitely want to get with this woman. I only endorse people that I trust.
Please.
So you definitely want to do that. And this has been another episode of The Real 2 Cents. You didn't ask us for it, but we give it to you anyway.